It's a new year. And you know what else? It's election time. Good day, everyone. We're just a little more than 3 weeks into the new year. And yep, we are not exactly in a celebratory mood. Um, the COVID cases in the Philippines has been very high this past few weeks. The daily new cases. I remember just around Christmas time, we were averaging something like 200, 250, or 300 new cases daily. And then suddenly, it started really rising exponentially about 2 weeks ago. And I remember last week at around this time, we hit 39,000 daily new cases. And that was the highest number that we have had so far since the start of the pandemic. And well, of course, I cannot help but feel really anxious about all of this. A lot of people I know tested positive for COVID. It's not just them, but also their families. And I remember last week on the day that we hit 39,000, I remember walking into the 7-Eleven branch um, on the first floor of our building. And I remember just feeling paranoid. I felt there were too many people there, and for the first time, I felt unsafe walking into that shop. It has improved a little bit this past few days. I believe yesterday we had something like in the lower 30,000s. Not 39,000 as just like last week, but I guess it's probably not accurate because a lot of people probably are just testing at home right now, so they are not part of the official count. Okay, of course, that is not why we're here today. Today, we're going to talk about the coming Philippine elections and how you can get involved in the coming elections by being a non-partisan election observer. And you can become that by signing up as a NAMFREL volunteer. Before we go to that, I would just like to remind that right now the Philippines is officially on election period. According to the Commission on Elections, the election period started on January 9, 2022, and it's going to last until June 8, 2022. And of course, our elections, the 2022 national and local elections are happening on May 9. Why January 9? So what does it mean if the Philippines is already on election period? What that means is there are already certain things that are prohibited. For example, bearing, carrying of firearms or transporting firearms or other deadly weapons, unless they are authorized in writing by the COMELEC, they are not allowed. It is also not allowed to transfer or move officers or employees in the civil service. It's also not allowed to alter the territory of a precinct or establishment of a new precinct. The use of security personnel or bodyguards by candidates or prospective candidates, unless authorized in writing by the COMELEC, they're also not allowed. And there are some other things that are not allowed in relation to the use of security forces. And it's you might think that the campaign period has started because it seems that many people have been campaigning since last year. On TV and on the internet. But according to the Commission on Elections, the campaign period actually starts on February 8. So February 8 to May 7, 2022, that's the campaign period for candidates for president, vice president, senator, and party list groups. And the campaign period for members of the House of Representatives and other local candidates, the campaign period for them is going to be from March 25, 2022 to May 7, 2022. So NAMFREL, or the National Citizens Movement for Free Elections from the Philippines, is the first non-partisan citizen-led national election monitoring organization in the world. It was formed in October 1983 and monitored its first election in 1984. So, myself, I have been part of NAMFREL since 1998. I admit I did not start as a NAMFREL volunteer. I started out as a member of a paid national secretariat. And I'm still now a part of the NAMFREL National Secretariat team. And we are now busy preparing for the coming elections. So NAMFREL, as I said, is an election monitoring organization. But what is an election monitoring organization? So an election monitoring organization is a group of people whose task is to observe the conduct of different election processes, and then to basically compare that with to compare the conduct of the elections as observed and check that against the existing election laws, rules, and regulations of that particular place or particular country. So, for example, in the Philippines, if you're observing Philippine elections, you are going to match what you are looking at, what is being done or what is being conducted against the published, known to all stakeholders, election laws, rules, and regulations. And then the success or failure of a particular election process depends on the adherence of what was observed or what actually took place to the one that is stipulated by the law. So in the Philippines, NAMFREL has been doing that since 1984. But internationally, NAMFREL volunteers have also worked as trainers, observer team members, election administrators, and resource persons in more than 40 countries so far. And NAMFREL volunteers have been directly involved in the creation of similar election monitoring organizations in some of these countries. So NAMFREL is based in Mandaluyong City. So the national headquarters is in Mandaluyong City. But NAMFREL has different chapters all over the country. And for this coming elections, NAMFREL has been mobilizing volunteers since the early part of last year. To be able to observe the 2022 national and local elections. So for the coming elections, NAMFREL is again looking at deploying volunteers all over the country to monitor the conduct of election day activities. But of course, not only that, there are certain activities that are also carried out even before election week. So if you sign up early, and if there are certain activities in the areas that volunteers signed up for, then they may be tapped by NAMFREL to do those activities for NAMFREL, to monitor those activities. So for this coming election, NAMFREL is going to monitor, or NAMFREL plans to monitor election day in different voting centers across the country. It will be focusing, of course, on the automated elections process, and it will participate in certain activities also on election day, such as the random manual audit of elections. And so right now, what NAMFREL needs is volunteers. And so NAMFREL volunteers will be serving on election week. But as I said, you may be tapped early if there are certain activities that require the presence of NAMFREL volunteers. So what are the requirements? The number one requirement for NAMFREL volunteers is you should be non-partisan. And being non-partisan, what that means is that you are not campaigning for or against certain candidates. you are not openly supporting or openly in opposition to certain candidates, whether verbally, in person, or through your social media accounts. So that's what being non-partisan means, and that is one thing that NAMFREL really takes seriously. And if you are found out to be partisan, meaning you are not qualified to become a NAMFREL volunteer, then you will be dropped from the roster of volunteers. Simple as that. And so what does okay, before that, so there are other certain requirements for the coming elections. Of course, this the 2022 elections is going to be new normal elections according to the COMELEC. And the COMELEC has already released guidelines for the conduct of the coming elections, and there will be new activities or new processes inside the voting centers that the COMELEC will be doing for the coming elections. And NAMFREL volunteers, of course, are required to follow all COVID-related guidelines and protocols. And then when a NAMFREL volunteer gets deployed inside the voting center and inside polling precincts, those places are under the authority of the Commission on Elections. So NAMFREL volunteers are required to follow all guidelines set forth by the COMELEC inside their premises. And according to the rules of the Commission on Elections, observers should also not be members of the barangay council or barangay tanods, or the village council or the village security. And very important, observers should not have been convicted of any election offense or crime. Okay? So how does one become a volunteer? You can now sign up actually as NAMFREL volunteers by going to NAMFREL's official website. That's www.namfrel.org.ph. And so if you go to NAMFREL's website, there is a button there that says Volunteer 2022. You just click on that and follow the links and sign up as a volunteer. So I would just like to inform you that if you do sign up as a volunteer, you should not expect to be deployed immediately. Of course, all applications will be processed. They will have to be approved first if you are qualified to become a NAMFREL volunteer. And do not expect to be deployed immediately. Like for example, if you sign up immediately after listening to this, it's only January. Do not expect to be deployed immediately because elections is still a few months after this. So it's still in May 2022. So you might be NAMFREL might reach out to you closer to election week. And as I said earlier, if there are certain activities that require NAMFREL volunteers in the coming months, then if you already have signed up and your application has already been approved, then you might be tapped to serve as NAMFREL volunteer immediately. It's not going to be us here at the headquarters who will be contacting you unless you signed up as a NAMFREL volunteer at the NAMFREL headquarters. So for example, if you signed up as a volunteer where you live, for example, you live in Makati City, and then you signed up as a volunteer in Makati City, then the NAMFREL core volunteer or the NAMFREL person in charge of Makati City will be the one reaching out to you and coordinating with you for your deployment. So what does one get as a volunteer? Of course, as a volunteer, you will not get paid. You will not get paid, but NAMFREL will see to it that you will have enough amount for your food and transportation on the day of your service as a NAMFREL volunteer. Of course, here in NAMFREL, we will also strive to give you a NAMFREL t-shirt at least, and definitely you will have a NAMFREL ID that you can use when you serve as NAMFREL volunteer, because that's important. The COMELEC will be looking for that. And then, so I really invite you to sign up as a NAMFREL volunteer. It's very fulfilling. NAMFREL volunteers will tell you how fulfilling it is. I myself, even if I started out as a member of the NAMFREL National Secretariat team, I have experienced becoming a NAMFREL volunteer in years when I was not really employed by NAMFREL. But I still returned as a volunteer. It's very fulfilling, to be able to do something that is, to be able to participate in something, that is bigger than we are. There's something very fulfilling about that. You are contributing something to the country, and you can see immediately that your contribution is having an effect. There is something very fulfilling about that, and that is the reason why many NAMFREL volunteers have stayed on as volunteers. So a lot of our volunteers right now have been volunteers since 1984, since 1986. And it's not only them, even their families have become volunteers. Their children have taken over entire NAMFREL chapters as the heads of chapters. Because it has become, a way of life. It has become part of who they are as humans and as Filipino citizens. To be of service to our country this way. Okay? So, I would really like you to sign up as a NAMFREL volunteer. Just go to namfrel.org.ph. If you have further questions, you can send a message to NAMFREL through NAMFREL social media channels. Again, the website is namfrel.org.ph, and NAMFREL is also on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can also send your message to me through paolo@paolomaligaya.org. Again, it's paolo@paolomaligaya.org. I'm a member of the NAMFREL National Secretariat team, and if you send me a message that is related to NAMFREL, I will see to it that it will reach NAMFREL. And that's it for this episode of the Real Life and Postcard Views podcast, available on your favorite podcast source. We are now on Spotify, Apple Podcast, YouTube, Amazon Music, and Audible. Please don't forget to subscribe to this channel. We have new content every other week or so. If you're listening on YouTube, hit the notification button and drop us a comment below. Visit our website at paolomaligaya.org and follow us on our social media channels. Have a great day. God bless you and stay safe.